Hello, welcome to our Bible study, session 5, Apocalyptic and Pandemic, What Revelation is Telling Us Today. And this is the beginning of chapter 6, and we'll go through chapter 7 today. That very dramatic time when the Lamb that was slain, the risen Christ, is opening the first 6 seals on that scroll that was given, that nobody else could open the seals. So beginning in chapter 6, verses 1 and 2, Then I saw the Lamb open one of the 7 seals, and I heard one of the 4 living creatures call out as with a voice of thunder, "Come!" I looked, and there was a white horse. Its rider had a bow, a crown was given to him, and he came out conquering and to conquer. So the Lamb that was slain opens the first seal on the scroll, and this begins a dramatic process, eventually opening the 7 seals on the scroll, one at a time. As the first seal is opened, one of the 4 living creatures calls out with a thundering voice, "Come!" From somewhere unspecified, a white horse comes running out. Its rider has a bow, we assume with arrows, but we're not told that, and a crown is given to him. The crown is a sign of the conqueror. And in Revelation, conquering means persevering faithfully through great tribulation and adversity. This horse and rider come out with the task of conquering, and they are achieving that task. And now, chapter 6, verses 3 and 4. When he opened the second seal, I heard the second living creature call out, "Come!" And out came another horse, bright red. Its rider was permitted to take peace from the earth, so that people would slaughter one another, and he was given a great sword. So these are all of destruction. And so the second seal is now open, and the second living creature calls, "Come!" And out comes a bright red horse. Its rider is not described in terms of appearance, but rather by, other than the horse being red, but by what he did. This rider took peace from the earth so that people would slaughter each other. The rider was given a sword. And then verses 5 and 6, the text says, when he opened the third seal, I heard the third living creature call out, "Come!" And I looked, and there was a black horse. So white, red, now black, and its rider had a pair of scales in his hand. And I heard what seemed to be a voice in the midst of the 4 living creatures saying, "A quart of wheat for a day's pay, and 3 quarts of barley for a day's pay. But do not damage the olive oil and the wine." That's a little confusing, I know, but let me explain. The third seal is open, the third living creature calls out, "Come," and out comes a black horse. And the rider is carrying a pair of scales, and scales often symbolize judgment, and certainly the symbol means that God would be judging the world for its behavior, especially all those who've oppressed and persecuted. And there was also a second level of meaning here. Revelation was most likely written during the final decade of the 1st century AD. And we know from history that Emperor Domitian issued an edict in 92 AD to destroy half the vineyards and possibly the olive groves. And the result was famine prices for grain. Profiteering it was. The price of oil and wine skyrocketed. The scales represented a gross distortion in terms of weights and costs of these items. A quart of wheat for a whole day's pay, 3 quarts of barley cost a whole day's pay. This symbol is a further reason to believe that Revelation was written during Domitian's reign between 81 and 96 AD. And now chapter 6, verses 7 and 8. When he opened the 4th seal, I heard the voice of the 4th living creature call out, "Come!" And I looked, and there was a pale green horse. Its rider's name was Death, and Hades followed with him. And they were given authority over the 4th of the earth to kill with the sword, famine, and pestilence, and by the wild animals of the earth. So the 4th seal's open. The 4th living creature calls, "Come," and a pale horse, kind of a livid color, slightly green, maybe the color of ashes. All those are descriptions that are used. And this horse appears, and its rider is called Death and Hades, death and hell. And this is a reference to Revelation 1:18, when the keys of death and Hades were given to Jesus. And death is an inevitable consequence of war. And this 4th rider is the last of the so-called four horsemen of the apocalypse. And now, continuing on verses 9, 10, and 11 in verse 6. When the Lamb opened the fifth seal, I saw under the altar the souls of those who had been slaughtered for the word of God and for the testimony they had given. And they cried out with a loud voice, Sovereign Lord, holy and true, how long will it be before you judge and avenge our blood on the inhabitants of the earth? And they were each given a white robe and told to rest a little longer until the number would be complete, both of their fellow servants and of their brothers and sisters, who were soon to be killed as they themselves had been killed. And so things are different now. We've gotten through those first four seals with the four horses and horsemen, and now the fifth seal. No horses or riders appear with the fifth seal. The four living creatures had each called out, Come, the first four, but now that doesn't happen. And instead, John sees the presence of martyred souls under the altar in heaven. And these souls are crying out for vengeance against their persecutors. And they cry, How long will it be before they see retribution? And they are promised that they will go straight to heaven, that in a way that would be similar to, the promise that later was given to Islam. Those who were martyred would go straight to heaven. And that's the promise here. And they were given and are wearing white robes of purity and of conquest that mark them as martyrs who have persevered. But they would have to wait for that retribution until all who would eventually be martyred had been martyred. And then would come their vindication and retribution. And now verses 12 through 17, the opening of the sixth seal. When he opened the sixth seal, I looked, and there came a great earthquake. The sun became black as sackcloth. The full moon became like blood. And the stars of the sky fell to the earth as the fig tree drops its winter fruit when shaken by a gale. And the sky vanished like a scroll, rolling itself up. And every mountain and island was removed from its place. And then the kings of the earth and the magnates and the generals, the rich and the powerful, and everyone, slave and free, hid in the caves and among the rocks of the mountains, calling to the mountains and rocks, saying, Fall on us, hide us from the face of the one seated on the throne and from the wrath of the Lamb. For the great day of their wrath is come, and who is able to stand? So the Lamb opens the sixth seal, and a series of cosmic woes is shown. And in rapid succession, there's a great earthquake. The sun turned black. The full moon began to look like blood. The stars fell to the earth like leaves in the wind. Then the sky rolled up like a scroll and vanished. And all the mountains and islands on earth were removed. This great cataclysm. And all people, both the powerful and the weak, were terrified. Being rich and powerful would not help you any. Being poor and weak would not harm you anymore. It was the same for everyone. And they hid and they prayed to die, that the mountains would fall in on them. And the day of wrath and judgment had come. In Latin, dies irae, dies illa, means day of wrath and doom impending. And these are words from the Latin Mass, the Roman Latin Requiem Mass. And the question, who is able to stand in such time? Before the seventh seal is opened, though, there is a break in the action. We're into chapter 7 now, verses 1 through 12. After this, I saw four angels standing at the four corners of the earth, holding back the four winds of the earth, so that no wind could blow on the earth or sea or against any tree. And I saw another angel ascending from the rising of the sun, having the seal of the living God. And he called with a loud voice to the four angels who had been given power to damage earth and sea, and said, Do not damage the earth or sea or trees until we have marked with the seal of our God the servants of our God, with a seal on their foreheads. And I heard the number of those who were sealed, 144,000, sealed out of every tribe of the people of Israel. From the tribe of Judah, 12,000 sealed. From the tribe of Reuben, 12,000 sealed. From the tribe of Gad, 12,000. From the tribe of Asher, 12,000. From the tribe of Naphtali, 12,000. From the tribe of Manasseh, 12,000. From the tribe of Simeon, 12,000. From the tribe of Levi, 12,000. And from the tribe of Issachar, 12,000. From the tribe of Zebulun, 12,000. From the tribe of Joseph, 12,000. From the tribe of Benjamin, 12,000 sealed. And after this I looked, and there was a great multitude that no one could count from every nation, from all tribes and peoples and languages, standing before the throne and before the Lamb, robed in white with palm branches in their hands. And they cried out in a loud voice, saying, "Salvation belongs to our God and unto the Lamb who is seated on the throne." And all the angels stood around the throne and around the elders and the four living creatures, and they fell on their faces before the throne and worshiped God, singing, "Amen, blessing and glory and wisdom and thanksgiving and honor and power and might be to our God forever and ever." So 6 seals have been opened, and before the 7th seal is a scene from after that 6th seal is opened, and John sees 4 angels representing the 4 corners of the earth, north, south, east, and west. And they held back the 4 winds so they could not blow. And the natural order stops for the process of marking God's followers. And there are 12,000 sealed from each of the 12 tribes of Israel. And remember, 1,000 times 12, the 12 tribes, 12,000, or 1,000 times the 12 in each of the 12 tribes. One interesting thing in listing the tribes is that you may recall that the tribe of Joseph was divided into Ephraim and Manasseh, his 2 sons. And that's when the Levites were not given land because they were given responsibility for the temple. Well, in this listing, you have Manasseh listed as one of the tribes, but you also have Joseph listed as one of the tribes and Levi. So the numbers are a little off, but it doesn't matter because it's what they symbolize that counts. In some ways, this is a reference to Revelation 4:4 and the 24 elders representing Israel and Christianity. And it's likely that these represent the symbolic number of Christian martyrs. The number does not mean that there were only 144,000 martyrs, 12 times 12,000, but that all who have been redeemed are included in this grand and meaningful and symbolic number. There's probably no great meaning in the ordering of the tribes. After they were announced, a vast assembly appeared. These were the redeemed from all nations and people of all languages, not just Israel. And they were robed in white with palm branches in their hand, like Palm Sunday. The white robes represented those who had conquered by remaining faithful through the persecution, people of all languages. This group sings a song of praise, probably in many different languages. It's a scene reminiscent of Pentecost, as told in Acts chapter 2. And in response, the angels and the 24 elders bowed in worship, and they sang their own song of praise, but no language was specified. And finally, Revelation chapter 7, verses 13 to 17. Then one of the elders addressed me, saying, "Who are these robed in white, and where have they come from?" And I said, "Sir, you are the one that knows." And then he said to me, "These are they who have come out of the great ordeal. They've washed their robes and made them white in the blood of the Lamb. For this reason they are before the throne of God and worship him day and night within his temple. And the one who is seated on the throne will shelter them. And they will hunger no more, thirst no more. The sun will not strike them, nor any scorching heat. For the Lamb at the center of the throne will be their shepherd, and will guide them to springs of the water of life. And God will wipe away every tear from their eyes." So the identity of this 144,000. One elder spoke to John with the question, "Who are these robed in white?" And John couldn't answer except to say, "You're the one who knows, not me." And so the elder answered, "These are the ones who have come through the great persecution. The white robes have been washed in white by the blood of the Lamb, the one who has opened the 6 seals. They have come through the great ordeal and persecution and claim the promise of being in God's presence forever. The promise of God's sheltering presence, which is always ours. There's no more hunger or thirst. The Lamb will guide and protect them, will direct them to the springs of the waters of life, which is symbolic of the paradise of Eden being restored, which was a very normal apocalyptic image. And in the beautiful language of apocalyptic, God is there personally to comfort them. There are still tears, but God wipes away all those tears from their eyes. And that's all we'll do today. And next time, we'll get to see what's behind that seventh seal.